Black Panther 2 was the second best thing to come out of Phase 4. That being said, the standards are so damn low that the best parts of this movie were two silent montages of T'Challa that any unskilled video editor could have put together. This entire film was meant to be a tribute to Chadwick Boseman, who portrayed T'Challa for 4 years before passing away from cancer. They probably wanted this to be for T'Challa what Spider-Man Far From Home was for Tony Stark. A film that simultaneously acts as a memorial for the former hero while seeing a younger hero come into their own. But to me, Black Panther Wakanda Forever didn't hit that mark because T'Challa hasn't been in the MCU that long. T'Challa's presence may have been significant on a superficial cultural level for black people, but he didn't have the chance to build the broader cultural appeal that Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark had earned. This brings me to my first point, which is that they should have recast T'Challa. Chadwick Boseman did a great job portraying the Black Panther. Even more impressive given he was doing it while his own body was killing him. But let's be honest, the character T'Challa is more significant than any actor that portrays him. When Marvel eventually stops publishing comics, Chadwick Boseman will be just a footnote in the grand history of T'Challa's character. And that isn't a knock on Boseman. The character is older than the actor. In fact, T'Challa has been around longer than the bulk of Marvel Studios' workforce. By not recasting T'Challa, Marvel Studios are showing their creative shortcomings, which will also result in financial loss. Tony Stark is dead, Steve Rogers is gone, the Hulk is seemingly going to be busy raising his hippie son, and Thor has been reduced to a punchline by Taika Waititi. T'Challa should have become the linchpin for the MCU going forward, because nobody introduced or featured during Phase 4 has the chops to take on that role. Not even Doctor Strange, who, just like T'Challa, doesn't yet have the staying power of Tony Stark, despite getting 2 solo films, appearing in 2 Avengers films, having a sizable role in one of the most popular Spider-Man films ever made, and a small appearance in Thor Ragnarok. Don't get me wrong, Disney is trying really hard to fit Strange into that role, but he just isn't there yet. Moving on to T'Challa's replacement, Shuri. I was not in any way surprised that Shuri would become Black Panther. And I mean that from the point the movie was even announced. However, when watching the movie, it didn't seem unearned. There weren't any woke or girl power moments with her character, which was incredibly refreshing. However, I didn't like her rejection of some of Wakanda's most sacred traditions. I get that she was always more of a tech geek, but I thought she would step up to the plate much earlier in the film. Granted, Killmonger had burnt all the heart-shaped herbs back in Black Panther 1, so she had to 3D print one. So Shuri really did pull her powers out of thin air in a way. I don't want to harp on this too much, but I am astounded that Disney allowed a black female character to struggle and fail and have so much character growth and earn her place by the end of the story. Typically, Marvel's idea of representation is so shallow. They try to force feed us some race or gender swapped character as the best new hero and expect us to just accept it because they said it. Though I was somewhat perplexed by her sudden fighting skills at the end. I get that the heart-shaped herb gives the Black Panther enhanced strength, agility, and whatnot. But when did she learn how to fight? Her battle against Namor was brutal, in contrast to the primarily lighthearted and comedic tone of Phase 4. Yet, during that fight, I couldn't help but imagine how much cooler it would have been if that had been T'Challa fighting Namor, given his experience as well as the history that the two characters have in the comics. This is a good segue into the next part, where I say that Namor was a bitch. I'll make a separate video going over all the changes to Namor and Atlantis. They managed to get his powers right at least, and named him a mutant, although his weakness to heat and dry air is much stronger in the movie than in the comics. In terms of his character, well, let's just say that all of you knuckleheads on social media who were giddy at hearing an accent from a Hispanic character in the MCU, the people at Marvel Studios know just how little they have to do with representation for you to get excited about consuming it. In the movie, you had not Namor holding a child hostage so that Wakanda would help Talokan from the rest of the world. The same guy who threatened Wakanda, telling them that his army could wipe their country from the face of the earth, has also been hiding underwater for 500 years because some white guy shot a musket at him in the 1500s. It's funny. This guy's whole shtick is, poor me and my people, but also, if you don't help me, I'll wipe you out. Even in the MCU, people of color have to manipulate and guilt trip each other into being allies. Moving on to the side characters, starting with my favorite character in the movie, Ramonda. She is the only main character who doesn't have powers and doesn't showcase any fighting skills, and yet she has the most presence of any character in the film. When she met with the UN, or whatever that world government organization was, She has the Dora Milaje walk in the guys who tried to steal the vibranium and basically said, listen, you morons can keep your globalist bullshit to yourselves. Also, good luck trying to steal vibranium in the future. It was such a badass moment, and she goes out like a hero, saving some random girl she just met. I also enjoyed M'Baku. He was always surprisingly the most level-headed and rational guy in the room. And he's one of the rare MCU characters that can appropriately introduce humor. Probably because he isn't making the cringe millennial jokes that are so often meant to diffuse any tension in a given situation, but rather he's the guy who just walks into the room and starts busting your balls. What they did with Namora and Atuma is a travesty. They were nothing more than devoted lackeys of Namor, completely ignoring the character's history in the comics, brought in only for name recognition. They could have been given generic names like Finn and Pearl, and it wouldn't have made any difference. Speaking of irrelevant characters, Everett Ross and Valentina didn't need to be there. They added absolutely nothing to the plot. I have nothing good or bad to say about Okoye and Nakia. The quality of the portrayal of their characters is what I've come to expect. Though I did hate the Midnight Angel costume, it made Okoye look like a Power Ranger villain. Riri Williams is as irrelevant to the film's overarching plot as she is in the comics. They could easily have made some random person build the vibranium detector and then gotten them out of the film and given her screen time to someone else. But to the 3.5 Ironheart fans out there, I know you're not winning any arguments defending your character, so why bother getting mad? If you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that the existence of Riri Williams is nothing more than an unfortunate side effect of Brian Michael Bendis' ego. The plot of Black Panther 2 was so obviously contrived. It ignores the lore from the first Black Panther regarding Wakanda being the only source of vibranium. It depends on the audience accepting that despite Howard Stark having the technology to find the Tesseract at the bottom of the ocean in the late 40s, we're supposed to expect that nobody had discovered vibranium in the sea or an entire underwater empire. By having the Atlantean origin tie into a plant shown to them by a jaguar god, the writers went the lazy route of making Namor a Mexican Black Panther and Talokan a Mayan Wakanda. The story ends with Shuri and Namor deciding not to kill each other because of their respective mother's influence. We should be happy that we didn't find out that Namor's mother's name wasn't also Ramonda. As for the mid-credits scene revealing that T'Challa and Nakia secretly had a son also named T'Challa, I have a couple of theories on that. One, I think that they did that so that at some point they can once again have a King T'Challa who is the Black Panther without recasting the original T'Challa. As the comic book Black Panther has decades of history, which gives the MCU plenty of stories to tell with his character, but they'll be passing those stories on to his son instead. My second theory involves the X-Men character Storm. In Marvel Comics, the mutant Storm met and fell in love with T'Challa when they were both teenagers, and they eventually married. However, Storm hasn't been introduced in the MCU yet. So what they could be planning is to introduce a young version of the X-Men, and by that point, include a time skip or some other method of aging up young T'Challa so that he's the one who falls in love with Storm. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions on what you thought about the film, as well as your theories on what you believe is in the cards for young T'Challa. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Also hit that notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. I'll see you all next time. Bye.